talk about a tree, how tall is the tree on the ground, how tall is the building, how tall is this, everything that's in right angles, because that's all that SOHCAHTOA works for. You can only do that for right angles. But if you're reading out everything like this right angle, none of it looks like a tree out there that doesn't make a right angle to the ground. So there's these law signs and law cosines in order to put an exclamation on that they work for any triangle. It doesn't have to be a right triangle. And so now you're not restricted to just right angles. So the law signs, we're going to talk about our lovely ABC triangle here, where angle A is across from little a, side A, angle B is across from side B, and angle C is across from side C. And what the law of sine says is that we can write proportions comparing the sine of an angle with the side across from it. So we can say the sine of angle A divided by side A, capital letters for the angle, lowercase letters for the sides, is equal to the sine of angle B over side B, which is also equal to the sine of angle C over the side C. Now you don't have to set up all three every time it's a problem, but it doesn't matter which side of the angle they give you, because the sine of the angle divided by the side across from it will always be equal to the other side of the angle and the side across from it. And also, you can flip it over, right, depending on what makes the most sense, which means you can write it like this. But think about the way that we can write proportions. You could also flip it over and you could say this is the same as if you wanted to say A over the sine of A is equal to B over the sine of B, which is equal to C over the sine of C. Whichever way makes the most sense for you to set up. You can set up a proportion, you can cross multiply, you can get your answer now for non-right triangles. And your book likes to say, like, these only work given certain things, right? You have to have either angle side, they have to give you two angles and a side, or they have to give you an angle, a side, and an angle. And as we talk about this more tomorrow, we talk about law of cosine, right? Either they're going to give you enough information to do all signs, or they're not, and then they're going to have to do it. So, like I asked you to solve this yesterday, we couldn't do this because we only knew how to do it with right angles. But now we can set up a proportion with wall signs. Wall signs also works for right triangles, but so does SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA is also usually. So, there's kind of the big thing. The same thing happens with SOHCAHTOA. How do I know what to set up? You have to use an angle and the side that you know across from it. Do we know an angle and a side across from it? Right? We know angle R and we know the side across from it, which means I'm going to have to use that. And what am I trying to find? Right, I could write that. I could write the sine of 29 degrees divided by 8. That would be sine of R over R. And I'm trying to find P, so this is where it matters where you put this. Am I going to put P on top or P on bottom? Right, the little p, the side has to go in the same spot as the side. So if we're going to put sine on the top, then little p would go on the bottom, and we would just say sine of 17 here. Questions on where I'm getting that? And then it becomes a calculator problem, a proportion problem, right? You can cross multiply and you can solve that. Maybe not a bad idea to do a little bit of work here. If I cross multiply here, I would get p times sine of 29 equals 8 times sine of 17. My advice is don't type it in your calculator till the very end, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of decimals, and you don't want to round off too early. Which means for me, I'm going to type it in all at once on my calculator. I'm going to type in 8 times the sine of 17 degrees. And remember on the calculator, when you type in sine, it opens a parenthesis, So you have to close that parenthesis on your calculator, or your calculator will keep taking the sign of whatever you type in. And then divided by the sign of 29. If you don't close the parenthesis on the very last thing you type in, it's okay. But if you don't close the parenthesis on the 17, you're going to get a very different answer. So if you don't have a calculator, you're going to want to practice it and make sure you pick the right answer. I think that's confident enough to shout their answer out. Was not. Calculator does what you tell it to do. But, yes, 4.8 is the right answer. So if you didn't get 4.8, you should ask the help. Anybody need help getting 4.8? So just like SOHCAHTOA, it's not that hard to solve it, but you have to set it up correctly. And so just like with SOHCAHTOA, maybe at first you're like, I don't know how I'm supposed to set it up. It's always going to be a side and the angle across from it with whatever you're looking for. So this is one where we're solving for the side. Are we okay? Can I go to the next one? So this is one, I don't want you to shout this out, but this is where, just like the one we just did, and then just like yesterday, I want you to open up your Chromebooks and go to Socrative again, and it's the same code as yesterday where it's just going to say ignore that. But if you don't have that still open, JKK. When you get your answer, if you could just go on there so we can so I can see and make sure we got this before we do it today. Oh, look. There's a U in here. JUKK. Excuse me. Have you not seen any of them or just not there? Do you have him later today? Yeah, I think that means you have your proportion set up wrong, right? Or you forgot some parentheses. So let's think about what did you set up? What did you write down? So I agree with that. Now what? Yeah, I think you're doing too much in your head, right? That's a U. U. Sorry, I just squeezed it. So, this would be 47 times C, right, if I cross multiply here? And then this would be 16 times sine of 23. So what did you just tell me you typed in your calculator? Sine of 47 divided by that. And that's wrong, right? Then what should you be doing to solve for C? What would you do to solve for C? No, you're right, you would divide, but you said you did sine of 47 divided by this. Shouldn't you be doing this divided by sine of 47? You see what I'm saying? This is why I think it's a really smart idea to write some stuff out. Because sometimes we do that all in our head, and it seems like we know what we're doing, but it's easy to mix up which way it's going. So if you actually write it out, oh, I'm dividing, this is what you should be typing. And it all depends on how you want to set it up. Just to kind of show you, whenever I'm looking for a side, I always flip it over. So like my paper, I wrote C over sine of 23. So I put the side on top equals 16 over sine of 47. So then I just multiply that over, so then I multiply it by sine of 23. And notice, it's exactly the same thing. I get 16 times sine of 23 divided by sine of 47. It doesn't matter which way you set it up, as long as you're putting the proportions matching up. I got D. Did you get D? Seems like there's everyone that's logged in and I got D.
Oh, that. I was like, this actually.
Okay? So again, show the setup, because tomorrow when we check our answers, if you don't get them right and you don't show what you set up, no one has a clue what you did, including yourself, because you just have an answer. The other thing is, what if they ask you to find the angle and put it aside? That's the other thing we can do with both sides. So you got to order those together, and they'll have you do on the computer. So notice on this one it says find x round to the nearest degree. So now you're looking for the sine of A. I kind of wish they would just say find angle A, but okay. So do you want to start with what you know, or you want to start with what we're looking for? So if we're looking for this, I could say the sine of angle A, or in this case, you could say the sine of x. So say x. And what would I have to put that over? Yeah, the side across from it. So the angle sine over its side, and that's going to equal, and you just have to make sure the signs go with the sine, right? Yeah, so that's what's going to be this side, right? And so that's what, because you have to set it equal to something so you can solve for x. So you can say the sine of 50 over the side across from it is 10. But when we're solving for an angle, we're going to have an extra step in this, right? Because we could do our little cross multiplying, just to kind of let you, I always cross multiplied and then divided over. I think I said this in the last, when we did proportions. When you're just trying to get this by itself, you don't even have to cross multiply. Like, you really could just multiply both sides by 11. Like, instead of cross multiplying and then dividing back over, a foreign exchange student from Thailand told me once, he's like, why would you do that when you could just multiply by 11? And you don't have it, like, then it's sine of x by itself already. And I was always like, huh, I never thought about it. I would just leave it all, but yes, totally you could do that. Anyway, it's okay. We can cross multiply. I know that's what we expect to talk about. Other ways sometimes. Because either way, you're going to end up getting that. Because right now, I would have 10 times sine of x equals 11 times sine of 50, and then I would divide by 10. And now I have the sine of x equals, and it's kind of up to you and what you want to do here. If you want to get the decimal here, write a lot of decimals out if you're going to do that. I'm going to write it like this for now, because I don't like to round until the end if I don't have to. This is what the sine of x equals. I want to solve for x, so what do I have to do if I want to solve for an angle? How do I solve for an angle? How do we do that with right triangle step? Well, if we multiply by 10, we're just going to move that back over, right? Like, I'm wanting to get rid of sine. How do I get rid of sine? I can divide by sine, right? Because it's times x times x there. I have to do the inverse of sine, right? That special button on our calculator. So when you're looking for an angle, you have an extra step that you didn't have when you're looking for a side, because you just type in sine of 47 degrees. When you're looking for the angle, you have to take the inverse of this ugly mess. So you have options here. We could type this in our calculator and write the big decimal out, or you really could type this all in your calculator at once. Inverse sine of 11 times the sine of 50, make sure you close that parenthesis, divided by 10. Because when you're, I'm just trying to get your for the calculator stuff, right? So in degree mode, inverse sine, that's the sine -1, the second sine, and then 11 times the sine of 50, close your parentheses, divided by 10, should give you an angle measure. And think about whether your answer makes sense. Since 11 is a bigger side than 10, should angle x there be bigger than 50 degrees? Yeah, so you can always see if my answer makes sense. And it's not that much bigger, which also makes sense. If we rounded to the nearest degree, you would just say that that is 57 degrees. But you got to remember, when you're looking for an angle, you have to use the inverse button. I'm not opposed if you want to do the decimal there, but just know 11 sine of 50 divided by 10 is like 0.8426. If you only did 0.8, right? If you don't use enough decimals, my calculator said the answer is 53 degrees. It's very different than 57. So if you want to type in the decimal here, my advice is use a minimum of 5 decimal places. Because when you cut those decimals off, you get what we call round off error. You round too early. So that's why I don't round to the very end. I like to keep with a bunch of parentheses. So I got one more example there. On the next one that you can go on to the page. Yes. I already started the next one. You can move to the next one. Again. Ready? Make Q D G J U K K. No, you don't. Yeah. There it is. It just happened. Four people have answered 100% correct. Notice you can't even use process of elimination because it should be less than 55, and all of them are less than 55. So you can't even use. Yeah. Law of cosine is in the same section, and I think that would have been a lot, so I'll do it once today. But yeah, law of sines is not so bad to do. Law of cosine. And we'll talk about why we need a law of cosine when we look at this. So again, as you are finishing up, I'm going to kind of just sped it up like the last one, like you're getting there. I would say the sine of x over 10 equals the sine of the angle that I know over the side that I know, which is 12. And again, if you put the sine on top of what you're looking for, I'm going to just multiply both sides by 10 and save myself an extra step of saying that the sine of x equals. And if you want to reduce, you can. What's great about sine, cosine, and tangent is whether you if it's the fraction or you don't, you consider it the same answer. So like I wouldn't even reduce it. I'm just going to say 10 sine of 55 divided by 12. And if you type that out, it's a really small decimal. So I feel like it's a great thing to remind you. You're like, x can't equal point whatever that is. So hopefully that reminds you, oh, I have to take the inverse sine of that. So you should be typing on your calculator the inverse sine of all of this. And what did you get? 43 something, which is 43. Okay? And so we're just doing raw science today, so hopefully not a bad homework assignment. We are going back to the book. Sorry. There's just good questions in there. So not that many questions, 12, 15, 18, 21. That's not many questions at all. I think that's 7 questions. And then tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be quick to go over this, and then we're going to spend some time on a harder one, I think, well, cosine. Probably looking at having a test like at the end of next week. Yay!